Hello again, and welcome to Football Manager Roleplay, a project where we create a player using the FM pregame editor, give him a potential ability of 200, and see if he will become the greatest American footballer ever. All we will do is we will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world-building exercise where Football Manager will provide all of the events, and we will build a story around these events. Let's take a look of where Henry Marshall is in the game right now. Now, if you remember the last slide we did, Henry Marshall has clicked over a few more appearances for Liverpool, but there's no real change in his current ability. He's looking for 4 more appearances with the main club so he can have 15 total appearances and get his first real salary boost. And now let's look at Liverpool standings. Go over here, shortlisted, and the club. There's the image of the club here. Pull up their competitions, and there you go. See your club competitions. And as you can see, they've got about 10 more games to play. Here they are down here. But they are down here. They are down here in the 10th position. They're a good 12 points behind Aston Villa here for any chance at European competition. Now, Stefano Pioli, he is supposed to be coming in and managing Liverpool on April 1st. His job will be to replace interim manager Mark Ridge Wilkinson. However, there are no noises which are being made by owner Frankie Yah that Pioli might not be taking over in April, and he has stayed tight-lipped regarding his plans for who will be the new manager. There is one thing that everyone has concluded, however: this Liverpool season will suck. Let's stop to take a little time to see how Henry Marshall has adjusted with the big club. Liverpool's team selection size is supposed to be 25 people, with people occasionally floating in and out of the main roster from the under-21s due to injury or rest. If we sort everyone involved with the main club by current ability, Henry is tied for 26th. He's a fringe player now. He hasn't played for the under-21s of Liverpool since December of 2026. There are 2 other 20-year-old players who have higher current ability ratings than he does. One is Russell John, who is from Wales, the 6-foot center back. And the other one is the recent midfield acquisition, Hassan Ouedraogo, rather. By now, the Liverpools have seen enough of Henry to size him up and realize he isn't going anywhere. So he's now learning the unwritten rules of the club. He now knows where to sit on the team bus. Henry doesn't deserve a seat near the back where the veterans hold court, and he hasn't been invited to play cards with them. So he sits somewhere front and middle, just behind the goalkeepers and electorals. In the very, very front of the bus, where no one sits, are the coaching staff. Henry generally shares the same area with Russell John, who has fewer appearances with the main club, but he has slightly more status there. Russell John wasn't much of a conversationalist. Now, John enjoys racquetball, and he enjoys football, and he wants to manage at some level in football someday. So Russell John likes talking about football, but aside from reading sports magazines, he wasn't a reader. You didn't get much of an impression of Russell John's personality. He was just a big, quiet guy. And sometimes Henry didn't want to talk about football when it was all that John ever wanted to talk about. Picking Henry's brain after a game exactly when he was the most tired. The thing Henry Marshall still couldn't get used to was the banter in the changing room. Now, Americans tended to segregate their conversations into serious and not serious. But it seemed like everything in the Liverpool changing room was not serious. There was no subject that wasn't so sacred that players couldn't riff on it for 15 minutes. And everyone liked taking the piss out of each other or trying good-naturedly to wind people up. If you had a weak spot, those guys would find it. They wound up Russell John by calling him white paint, and that he was as exciting as watching white paint dry. One day, the Liverpool players told Henry Marshall, in an attempt to wind Henry up, they told Henry Marshall that owner Frankie Yao had left a message for him to call him, but they gave him the number of a Chinese laundromat to call. And this left Henry to talk to a man who spoke little English, and by the time Henry realized he'd been had, his teammates were in stitches. Now, Henry knew the important thing was not to complain too much, or to be seen as a whiner, or someone who couldn't cut it. Now, he had heard the stories about how worse it was on some other clubs. I mean, this was just lightweight taking the piss. They asked him about his A levels, and he said he'd gone to school, and Henry said he'd taken classes online. He didn't have any A levels. Like what? On the computer? Why the fuck did you do that? I mean, as a Yank, even Bloody November wasn't sacred. During an instruction session from some visiting government safety officers, one of the older players was asked how they would recognize the clues that a biological terror attack was taking place. And the player responded, "I know it if Marchie's head blows up." It was the little things that kept Henry alive. Little compliments, doled out here and there, only when necessary. "Hey, nice tackle that one." Or, "Way to push him out of the way." But you always had to be wary. The rule was to hide all weakness, and particularly because the club was in 10th place and there was plenty of blame to be handed out. "Salah's past his prime," one club starter muttered where Henry could hear it. "Why don't they bloody sell him? They sold everybody else." And the players were really getting it from the coaches. One coach criticized the players. "You're not thinking about Europe. You're thinking about Las Vegas. Can't even fucking beat Norwich. If the American girls knew how shit you were, they wouldn't even touch you. Las Vegas, my ass." Henry thought it would be more enjoyable than this, but then again, he thought Liverpool would be winning. Liverpool in 10th place, no European competition possibly, new coach. It was going to be a long summer break. And now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the games in March from Liverpool. Let's look at the March 6th game. We have them facing Manchester United here. Liverpool is in 10th position. Manchester United is number 6. How did that game end? That game, Liverpool star dealt cruel injury blow. We'll talk about that one later. Here, Liverpool get a 2-0 victory. Mohamed Salah, he's the man of the match. He had the first goal there in the second minute. Henry Marshall was an unused reserve in that game. He just set in reserve. It was a very important game in the media because it was Liverpool, Man United. It was a big pickup for Liverpool supporters, but at a cost. Left winger Luis Diaz, he broke his ankle during the game, and he will be out for the rest of the season. Brings Wilkinson very happy, but Liverpool will indeed lose Diaz for injury. Up next, we have not one, not two, but 3 consecutive games in a row against Arsenal. Match number 1 and match number 3. These will be part of the Champions League round of 16 games, and those games might be Liverpool's last shot at greatness this year. The middle match, that is a Premier League game. The first match is at London. The next 2 are at Anfield. So we'll start the game. The first one is going to be on March the 9th. This is at Arsenal. It is part of the Champions League round of 16. How does that one end? Liverpool face Arsenal in UEFA Champions League match. We will get a Premier Division Team of the Week, and we will see Timber, Alisson, Salah all making that Team of the Week here. And Liverpool rescue late draw. This game ends 2-2. It's rescued by David Vertezi's goal in the 83rd minute. Arsenal initially led 2-0 on a pair of goals by Gabriel Jesus, who was named the man of the match. Henry Marshall was not selected for this game. So basically, with the tie, a win at Anfield on March 17th will move Liverpool up to the quarterfinals. Next game, this is going to be at at Anfield in Liverpool against Arsenal. Liverpool number 9 in the Premier League, and Arsenal at the number 3 position. Let's see how this game turns out. Liverpool takes on Arsenal. Yes, Gabriel Jesus is definitely a danger here. Liverpool suffer Arsenal disappointment. They go down 2-1 in that game. Eric Garcia, he had the goal in the 75th minute, put the visitors ahead in the league for good, and Garcia turned out to be man of the match in that game. Henry Marshall, he was named as a reserve. He did not play. A tough loss for Liverpool, and they need as much help as possible in the tables. Some other news coming out of the club. We have, let's see, I'm going to see a performance. Arteta thrilled with a comeback win. Aaron Briggs, he is the assistant coach. He has had his contract terminated. He came in with Liverpool as a Dane, I believe, in 2026. He's been fired by the club. The club did not provide any reasons for why he was fired. All they released was notice that he had been terminated. Under 21 performance analyst Ray Sherwood, he has now placed in the assistant coach role. Coming into March 17th, the second game against Arsenal. Liverpool has the instructions: win and you're in. I'm going to come here, Marino injured training. Liverpool take on Arsenal. Fans on St. Paddy's Day looking for a win against Arsenal. Do they get it? They do not get it. They lose. It's a 3-2 aggregate. They lose this game 1-0. This knocks them out of the Champions League. It took them a while to crack Liverpool, but Gabriel Jesus, he scores the winner in the 76th minute. That puts Arsenal forward. Let's see, right here. There we go. Henry Marshall, he is not selected for this game either. And last time they play Arsenal this year, and Liverpool is now officially out of the Champions League. Liverpool started their international break and had no further matches until April 3rd. Henry still had fears of being dropped down to the under-21 team, but he wasn't called to the under-21 game on the 21st. The Liverpool players thought that Mark Bridge-Wilkinson would be out soon, and Stefano Pioli would be arriving on April 1st. Bridge-Wilkinson had let Liverpool get knocked out of the Champions League. Yes, it was their fault, but in a way it was his fault. He was the gaffer. Better him to get the axe than them. Let him return to the under-18 coaching. But no one knew what owner Freddie Howe was going to do. Henry would soon be off, as he had been selected by the USA men's team for a friendly against Slovakia. He hadn't heard from the national team for a while, and he was glad not to be forgotten. That Monday, the 22nd, Henry Marshall received an unexpected call from his 35-year-old brother, Fred Marshall Jr., known as Freddie. Freddie had graduated from Caltech with an engineering degree, but immediately A, became a writer, and B, came out of the closet. The age gap between the two oldest Marshall children and the two youngest meant that Henry didn't talk much with Freddie, except during Thanksgiving or Christmas. Freddie got to the point. He stated that he had been between writing jobs for a long time, and the household bills were starting to pile up. His partner, Doug, was looking for a new job, and Freddie said, I'm worried if they're going to turn the lights out. I hate to ask Mom and Dad because they've done so much for all of us, so trust me, I never would have asked you, Henry, but you're my last hope. Basically, Freddie wanted a loan of $25,000. For Henry, that wasn't much money. Not at all. However, he remembered what his other older brother, the second of four in the Marshall family, Sean, had told him. Sean, who was also known as Petey, implied, apropos of nothing, that Freddie would someday come mooching for money from Henry. It was years earlier, but Henry never forgot that comment. Now, his parents had told Henry that now that he was a pro football player, there was an obligation to help out family members. But even after a few years in the pros, his parents had only asked him for money directly one time. Maggie, his slightly older sister, who was now finishing up studies at Duke University, she had never asked him for a dime, despite her student loans. And Henry really felt put on the spot. But since the money was an amount he could handle, he agreed to lend his older brother the money. He would send his brother a check after he got back home from Slovakia, and that would be the end of it. Freddie thanked him, they made small talk, and he said he hoped he had have the money to Freddie by Thanksgiving. Who knows? Maybe he'd even see the money. Out of sight, out of mind. The next game was March 24th. Now, this was not with Liverpool, but Freddie with the U.S. men's national team, as they would be traveling to Slovakia. Now, what was the result of that game? That was a 2-2 draw. Excuse me there. There are the results. The USA was up 2-1 at the half, but David Strelak, he's the one who ties it up for Slovakia in the 64th minute. U.S. had to settle for a draw. Now, Henry Marshall, he played, if we see his stats here, there he is. He played 78 minutes of this game. And it looks like he did a lot right when you come and look at how well he did in the player statistics. You know, I really can't figure out how he ended up with just a 6.4 player rating in this game. It resulted in his 12th cap for the USA team. Henry is hoping he'll be selected to the Nations Cup in June. And he did give this interview, and we'll go back to the part in the social feed we find. He gave an interview to 90minute.com, and he gave the Slovaks credit for being well organized. Now on April 1st, two things happened. The first is that's Jen released a list of their 50 best wonder kids in football, and there is not a single Liverpool player here anywhere that Liverpool has no wonder kids. So there you go. And the next big thing, however, was this whole Mark Bridge Wilkinson Stefano Pioli drama. Time was up. Frankie Yao, to be honest, did not want Stefano Pioli at Liverpool. However, Yao had spoken to the other members of the board of directors. He spoke to various quote-unquote big men in football at all levels. And the near unanimous conclusion was that Bridge Wilkinson, for all of his loyalty to Liverpool, was not an elite level manager. He had had ample enough time to prove otherwise and came up short. And the rumor had it that Yao was going to be forced to swallow his pride and agree to Pioli finally taking control of the club as manager. And as you can see here, the question really began to be what were we going to do about Bridge Wilkinson. Yao believed that Bridge Wilkinson had to accept some of the blame for Liverpool's poor showing, and that B, it would be a catastrophe to have an ex-manager on the staff with a new manager coming in. So Bridge Wilkinson was given the sack and told to move on. Stefano Pioli would move in with his own staff, and he would remake the club. That morning, Stefano Pioli delivered the news to the players. He used an interpreter, but he punctuated his speech with English phrases as he could speak some English. No more excuses anymore, he said. Don't feel sorry for yourselves. Your record reflects these excuses. Zidane couldn't speak English. That was an excuse. The old owner was an idiot. That was an excuse. Bridge Wilkinson wasn't good enough. But who was playing those games? So we're going to figure out what's wrong. All manage. So you have to pull your weight and play because we're out of excuses now. At the press conference, Pioli said, quote, Liverpool is one of the greatest clubs in the world. For them to be where they are, this is not right. Winning, sadly, has not been prioritized here, but we have the right ownership, we have the right coaching, and we will do what is needed to move back to where we belong. The goal is this, improvement, and we will improve the club, and we will make the most of its potential. There would, by the way, he told the players, be a full practice scheduled on Friday before Newcastle on Saturday. Not a run through, not a half day. We'll use what little time we have left, Pioli said. And that's it for this episode. Henry Marshall has slowly been learning the idiosyncrasies of being a player for Liverpool. His brother Freddie unexpectedly hits him up to borrow $25,000 from him. Liverpool is knocked out of Champions League, which appears to spell doom for Mark Bridge Wilkinson, who leaves the club, and Stefano Pioli takes over as manager of Liverpool. If you like anything that you're hearing or seeing, don't forget to click the like and subscribe buttons. Until next time.